Hello, Houston, and welcome to Public Affairs, Public Access. My name is Stacy Davis, and tonight we're talking Astroworld and Travis Scott. We're going to talk a little bit about the mass psychosis, a little bit about mob mentality, and perhaps a little bit about what's happening after the tragic events. I'm joined today by Frankie Five Times. She's a DJ and MC with Rebel Crew, which performs on KPFT, radio station KPFT. I've also got a clinical psychologist with me, Brother Sergeant Reverend Dr. Robert Gilmore Sr., CEO and founder of Real Urban Counselors. Hi, y'all.
Hello. How are you?
Hello.
There you are, Dr. Gilmore. So yeah, a lot of Astroworld is leaving the mainstream news media right now, but Houston is obviously still dealing with the tragedy that unfolded. So we wanted to sort of open up a forum here at Houston Media Source for people to call in and tell us their stories, ask us your questions, and just whatever you want to say to us about the events that happened at Astroworld. Any questions you have, give us a call. The telephone number down here is 713-807-1794. Since I am a little bit older and I'm not much of a hip-hop listener to her, I wanted to start off by asking you, Frankie, what kind of an artist, within the hip-hop milieu, what kind of artist would you describe Travis Scott as?
I guess he's kind of like dark wave or dark, like dark wave hip hop.
Extremely popular?
He rose in numbers in his popularity, but it was through like kind of piggybacking off of other name brands like Drake and Tame Impala, just different other acts they're all connected.
And they're all kind of into this dark wave?
Not all of them, but he started out, I think, with producing. So he didn't have like lyrics over his music. So that's how I was introduced to him. But it was kind of like if you liked him, you liked him. If you didn't, mm-hmm. A whole new era of rap began. So I kind of looked over.
So he's the leader of a kind of a new era of rap, you would say?
I wouldn't say the leader, but I would say definitely he's a leader.
He's popular.
Not the main leader.
And what's his significance, and tell us about rage culture.
I'm not really that familiar with rage culture. I mean, but I am from I grew up in the 90s, so I went to Fitz here locally every weekend, and coming from those days when the music was kind of homegrown and more organic, I guess you could say, I really don't give that much credence to the newer artists because they're more like studio artists, and they kind of just repeat the same things, like copy the same material and just do it where people can, they recognize it, so they already like it, and they build off of that.
I understand. What about you, Dr. Gilmore? What do you think about rage culture? Are you familiar with it at all? Do you know anything about this? Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, make that statement again.
Do you know anything about do you know anything about this particular rage culture in general? Have you seen a lot of the Astroworld videos? What do you think about sort of the encouragement to get hyped up that's going on in these crowds?
That's kind of funny. I'm an old veteran, so I grew up in the '60s and '70s. So when you start talking about culture and race, and oh, by the way, we have Dr. Higgins who's joined us. Stacy, he's one of our leading African American psychiatrists in the country, who's located right here in Houston, Texas. So you have another distinguished mental health expert.
Perfect. And thank you for introducing Dr. Higgins.
Yeah.
Welcome, Dr. Higgins.
Welcome.
Welcome. Happy to be here.
Well, let me go back to the original point you said about race and culture as it relates to
No, rage culture.
Rage culture.
Rage culture. I think it should definitely be said that was not an audience of all black people by any
Oh,
stretch.
no. I understand. It's just
No, rage culture.
the idea. But I think I can put in culture. So when you start saying rage, culture, and race, because quite frankly, this is a new group of young people who have, as the DJ Five said, have matriculated to this type of music and this type of behavior that's demonstrated in the music. We've had a number. This is a generational kind of progression of rap music from when it started with King Mo D and some other people at the beginning, NWA and people like that. So this is a whole new era of, to me, audience members and performers. And we have to always remember that the hip hop business is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So most of those entertainers are marketing and their promoters are marketing toward the audience. They really are marketing towards the audience. When they find a person or a personality like Travis Scott or Drake or these others, they bleed it. They're making money. So the reality is you're in the fifth generation of rap artists, and this type of culture just comes with it. I mean, the dynamics behind that, people didn't come there to go into some rage. They came there to be entertained, And there was some other dynamics involved, that led to the tragedy that we now are having to examine, because those crowd types of tragedies have happened over time, over the last 25, 30 years in different venues, and some countries have responded differently, and I think that's one of the realities that it made it look at.
What do you think, Dr. Higgins?
Well, it's great to be here, and I want to thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this. And definitely, I want to send out prayers and thoughts to the families who've lost loved ones and those who are still struggling, to live at this moment. But when I look at rage culture, to me, it's kind of like the new acronym for kind of what's happened with Travis Scott. And basically, you're looking at what's not really that new, which is a mosh pit. Yeah. So essentially, we're going to get hype, have fun, and jump around and do what young folk can do, realizing that as I approach 50, I can't jump around like that anymore. But that was a time when I could be near the stage and jump around and slam your head around and just have a really good time while listening to music. So that is the intent of what they're doing. This rage, and that you look like you're in a rage, but the folk are really actually having fun. There's no plan to hurt anyone or for anyone to get hurt. But the problem with some of the culture is also, you've got a mass of people. And, it's one thing when you're in an arena with 15,000 people. It's a difference when you're outside with 50,000 people. There are no chairs or anything to separate folk. And when you look at the setup, I know for myself, because I play a little bit, I play bass. I've never performed on stage in front of 50,000. Maybe about 5,000 at max. But the fact is that you really, you don't do the setup. Basically I'm on the bass. I play the bass. I don't play let people in the front door. I don't play how to let folk in the gate. I don't play how to check tickets. I play the bass. So the fact is that I think the rage culture, I think is being that terminology is being slid into Travis Scott as a person, or that the crowd had the intent of someone getting hurt. And mosh pits have been going on for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
and slamming your head around, having a good time, being hyped, jumping around, and getting it in, is what the point was. So I don't want us to confuse rage culture so far as raging at having a good time to be the same thing as raging, as in there is an intent for other people to hurt other folk or for somebody to die
Yeah.
at a venue.
I definitely think that's a fair assessment, and it should just a couple of notes to add in there. The venue was approved for 200,000 people, so they could have fit 200,000 people, and if they would have, it would have been a horrible disaster. I definitely think that messing stuff up, with breaking stuff, is kind of a urge that we all have at times, and definitely, letting loose is kind of a part of that. And yeah, mosh pits have been around for a long time. And getting wild at concerts has been around for a long time.
Well, let me say this, Stacey. I was in college many years ago. I also conducted and had opportunities to get security for shows way back during the Sam Houston Coliseum days. If anybody out there remembers that building, yes, okay. Well, you with me, Stacey? Stay with me now. Stay with me, Digging. And I think we had a concert with Bootsy and his rubber band, Bootsy.
Bootsy.
Yes, and he came out, and we had hired 50 security people from the university to help. And what happened was that the promoter, in this particular instance, had sold double tickets. And it was a huge crowd. I mean, it was just a huge crowd. And some of the people came to me with 2 tickets and said, Gilmore, this is what's going on. We can't seat people. I said, look, don't worry about that. Just man this front, because we could see that the crowd was really getting large. And all they had was a little rail, similar to what I saw out there in the Astroworld, a little rail. And we were in a building that was more control with the people on the floor. And so it was a little bit differently, but we had to press to make sure people didn't lose control. And a couple of times, Bootsy, really, he stopped everybody and said, calm down, because, he fires it up and everything's well. Yeah. So there was also some other external influences in the air. And I clearly remember how scary it was for 2 or 3 of his sets. That's what they were mentioning about after somebody had jumped up there and said stop and whatnot, and the set was still going on. So that means they got a, configured time frame. So they deep in it. And unless you some type of professional observer, or you are in the medical profession, or you've been there for that particular reason, which as you said, Stacey, if it would have been 200,000, that would have been ridiculous. They don't have that many at some race car events, So there was some adults who were supposed to be responsible for that crowd control. Of the ex-military man, that's logistical training is a part of what you do. The leadership is going to have to take the responsibility.
Well, let's
for that.
Let's talk a little bit about taking responsibility for this, because we can't deny the fact that Travis Scott has been cited for this twice. In 2015, he urged a crowd to rush the stage, break the barriers, and he urged one particular audience member to F-word someone up 6 times because they tried to steal his shoe. So he incited the whole, front of the mosh pit. He directed them to beat somebody up. And then again in 2017, he encouraged jumping from the 2nd floor balcony, and then it was another crowded situation, and a fellow fell from the 3rd floor balcony, and he's a paraplegic now. So it's nothing that Travis Scott hasn't been through. In fact, the lyrics to one of his signs says, "It ain't a mosh pit if there ain't no injuries. I got him stage diving out the nosebleeds," which doesn't sound all that bad to me. I mean, I'm not a judgy kind of a person, and we certainly did that kind of stuff in our punk rock days. But yeah, it seems like he would even be afraid, legally speaking, of something going wrong.
I mean, I'm not trying to butt in or anything. I just feel like we're kind of glossing over a really larger, bigger picture that isn't really, I don't know if maybe we shouldn't speak on it, but
Please do. I mean, that's what we're here for.
I just personally get the vibe that it's he's just an Illuminati project, and he's just doing what he's paid to do, and that's what most recording artists are doing these days. They sign a contract and they get large sums of money to perform these rituals, and it's inciting the crowd. I mean, just for that to be him and Drake, just for that to be in the headlines. I mean, didn't Trump incite the crowd a couple years ago?
That was this year.
Oh, this year.
Okay, so we're not. I mean, that's the reality of what you just said. When you say rage culture, he's an entertainer, so that's a part of kind of their his particular group. You know, they might use that type of language or whatever, but we just had the same thing on the political side.
Right. That's what I'm saying, how they're intertwined when it comes to the...
It's the same concept, rage. Well, now, wait a minute, take that back. I take that back. You know, all of these indictments and whatnot to the quote-unquote political leadership who was inciting people on January 6th, which is well documented. I mean, at this stage, you're right. You know, this is a reality check for people in their heads, their minds. I mean, Dr. Higgins can speak to that. Some people think they're being logical, but in reality, they enrage and they rage other people. Some people respond differently. Those people on January 6th did 5 times as much damage. I mean, wasn't as many people killed, but I mean, my God, people still going through the trauma.
And then you speak of, at least here in Houston, road rage, like when COVID started, just when people were out, it was just like all of a sudden people became very, very violent and just started acting out with this road rage because they could, and they could get away with it. And I mean, you see it on the news all the time. People are just getting shot like because of road rage, and it wasn't like that. I mean, I just didn't see people as commonly as I see it now, dying for something as petty as, you know, getting cut off or...
I definitely think that rage is a symptom of our culture. I think we're a very violent culture, and it's just sort of underneath the surface a little bit. But I do want to talk a little bit about, I think that Frankie makes a good point, and that there's some other things too, even whether you're a believer in the Illuminati or not, you can't deny the class difference of Kylie and the other Jenner,
the Kardashian, Kourtney and Kim,
Kylie and the other sister,
Chloe,
being escorted out and walking right by fans, a nurse or a medic who was performing CPR on 2 separate people, being sort of pushed out of the way as the Jenners are leaving the VIP section, you know, to get to safety. And this is like all happening at the same time, roughly around 9:34. They're being ushered out while people are being administered CPR. And 4 minutes later, a mass casualty declaration is filed. And I think that your tendency to see this as an Illuminati thing is, it speaks to sort of the rich and the poor and how they have different rules. And I also listened to a minister on the TV today talking about how it sort of speaks about what you were speaking to earlier about a sort of a minstrelsism that's going on with rap culture, where if this guy has gold teeth, I'm going to have shinier teeth, and it's like whatever sells. And they're not necessarily selling to the black culture; they're selling this image to the white culture, who gets to pretty much say rah rah until the poop hits the fan, and then they show their true, whether or not they're really fans of this person or just sort of minstrel fans. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, the one thing I would say is that with the concert, I don't remember hearing Travis Scott saying "rush the stage" or any of that at this concert. So, we're talking about some things that happened in the past. which
He did
honestly
well.
you have to look at.
He was approached on stage by two hype guys apparently, and he was told something. He was asked to stop twice. He said, "Who stopped? Who told us to stop?" And then the two guys came and they said something to him, and he said, "No, no, 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 no. We didn't came here to do that. You know what we came here to do? Let's make the ground shake." And then they started playing again. And this was right at about. In between 9:38 and 9:42. There.
Well, what I would add to that is, if you notice that he did stop twice. He
Yes.
stopped twice, and then as a musician, and I'm sure Reverend Gilmore can attest to this. There's a way that you actually slow the whole thing down, like if you're waiting or you're holding up. So if you listen, he did stop it twice. And then in that, he also waited where he slowed the music down because he has a live band.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like humming through a few things and humming through a few things.
Right.
So he's actually slowing the system down. But the fact is that Travis Scott does not have the ability to stop that concert. He has zero ability.
I disagree. He's the only one that has the
He
ability.
could just walk
He's
away.
the only
No,
one
he
that has the
doesn't.
ability
He
to
does
stop
not
the
have the ability. If you listen, I looked at in preparation for
Please.
this conversation, I looked at the contract. Only two people are allowed to stop that concert. So he doesn't have the ability, but he did stop it twice. Now, the other side of being an artist on stage is that you've got monitors in your ear and the music is very loud. If somebody's talking to you, you can barely even hear them because it's a deafening sound. So you're getting lights. Many times I've been on stage where you really can't even see the crowd very well.
Exactly.
Because you're looking at lights, you have monitors going to you, and you have plugs inside of your ear. So I don't know what he heard and what he didn't hear, but I do know that according to the contract, he was not allowed to stop the concert, even though you did see him stop it twice, slow it down, and he mentioned that he saw something inside of the crowd. Now, when it comes to the Kardashians and the family, if you've got a mosh pit going on, all right, and things have gotten out of control,
There wasn't really room.
Entire area.
There wasn't really room for a mosh pit. People were crammed too close together for it, like a mosh pit to go on.
If you look at the video, all right, because I've been looking at Twitter and all that, you see parts of the crowd where people are jumping up and down, going at it.
They're not affected.
So from the visual of him being on stage, if you look at the videos, people are moving around, but then he sees something. So one time there's a part where you see two people speaking to him, and I don't know if those are hype men or what, but he's pointing to where that he sees something that doesn't look right in the crowd. He does that twice. So the fact is that we're saying one thing when there's actually a viewpoint of what actually happened.
Yeah.
So you can see on video where he does that two times. Now, I'm going to tell you, on that stage, it's extremely loud. It's a lot of lights. And if you've ever been performing in front of a group of people, you've been practicing. So it looks like it's effortless. But no, you're going through a whole lot of iterations on trying. You got 50,000 people in the world watching.
That's a lot.
You've been working on this for months. Every detail of your performance for months. The artist is not normally, I think we're holding him to a higher standard to believe that he was supposed to look at the details of how many security, how many police officers, where the barriers at, who holds the gates, what are the paramedics doing. The artist doesn't do that. It is the event place that does that. Now, what I would say, is that we do have an issue of the world is very different right now. Yeah. So there's a level of aggression and lack of listening to authority that's been demonstrated over several years, where the lack of decor on how to speak to one another. We're looking at the January 6th January 6th insurrection. You're looking at the discourse of where we talk to people, where you have leadership of the United States speaking a certain way. You haven't him to get on stage and tell to beat people up and get that person out of here and saying that the police should hit people. And then now you have kids who are acting up at school. You have people shooting on the freeways. That was another event, a large event, not as big as that one, that happened that same weekend where people rushed the police and jumped the gate as well. Nobody got hurt, luckily. But you're now starting to see this on a regular basis where people do not follow normal human rules. In that if they say that the place is packed, we can't get anybody else in, we need to get folk out of here. Now when I was, I've been to some concerts in my life, And if they put up a barrier and said you couldn't go that way, you just didn't. You just
Didn't
waited.
go that way. Yeah.
I have
You
a
just-
question.
Go ahead.
Do you guys remember that when they were like protesting or they were like rioting in the streets and they were like, you know, going into businesses and throwing bricks and stuff like that? Do you guys remember that? I mean,
You talking about the 60s?
no, more
I
recently.
think she's talking about
What are you talking about, the 60s?
I think she's talking about the beginning of the Michael.
Yes.
Not Michael Brown. I'm drawing a blank right on.
George Floyd,
Thank you.
who's also from Houston.
Yeah.
What did you call it?
George Floyd.
At the
Well,
You know
when they
what
were
I'm saying? Listen what I'm saying, Stacey. Listen what I'm saying. I'm saying the 60s. I want y'all to understand that the rage has been a response to incidents. Now, what Dr. Higgs was talking about, in addition to this new generation, I'm going to be honest with you. I was really shocked at how many white people and Hispanics who from nice neighborhoods get off to that. I mean, you know, let's be frank. You know, I was really thinking, okay, this not 50,000 black people, like you said, Stacey. These are young, conservative, nice white people, nice Hispanic people who get off to this. So theoretically, they responded to a current culture that they like. And they want to hear that.
Well, I want
so
to talk.
the promoters, wait a minute, Stacey. The promoters want to hear this. They don't want this artist to get up about, oh, love everybody, hug everybody. That ain't what they dealing with in terms of making no money. That's what they did it with the Ray. And the more that, based upon your timeline, they knew he had that. And if you look at his sales, follow his sales, they all increased. Travis Scott wasn't no superstar when he come up in Houston.
No, he's not so new to LA.
When the DJ can tell us he wasn't no super, wasn't that well known. He was progressed to that, and his promoters and handlers made him push that. And so now that he done pushed it, that's what you get in terms of an artist. They didn't expect nothing else. Not in the city of Houston, New York. That's why they canceled it in Vegas.
Yeah.
He's the headliner in Coachella. They're going to have 200,000 people. They don't even know if they... Look, he's one of the top money makers. If you talk about the rap industry, and it's based upon, just like NWA with niggas with an attitude, they said about kill the cops. Now all of them are producers and this, that, and the other. They done made their $400 million. It's a money business game.
Now they all play cops on TV.
I think the rage culture is based upon what she was talking about. I don't know nothing about no Illuminati. I'm a preacher. I believe in evil, good and evil, period. That's what we've been in for hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, that's what I'd like to talk about next is just that thing. And it goes to mob psychology. It goes to, the January 6th thing. It seems like it's easy to incite people to make them angry. What is the barrier? What does it take to incite a crowd in that way?
It's frequencies.
And you think, and I'd like to hear what the psychologists say about that. Is there any evidence linking some of these? Her supposition to me earlier was that the noises the music that they were playing coming out of the speakers in the almost 7 hours before
actually beginning the show.
The Travis Scott stage, the chill stage, was empty for the whole concert, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just pumping out 6 hours worth of very repetitive, very strange music that people were saying was giving them stomach aches. What do you say to that?
Yeah,
It's weaponized.
I've been to venues where they have music playing all day. I mean, I don't know what
this wasn't music. It was like
frequencies.
It was like a repetitive. It was a repetitive thing.
I mean, I haven't heard anybody report that. I've seen people's stuff on Twitter feeds.
You got it?
We've even spoken to a few people.
It's in the discussion.
But I maybe it was something imperceptible to the ear. But most of the time at a rap concert, they're going to be playing rap music of which people listen to.
Yeah, they weren't. They weren't in this case.
Well, so like when
I don't want to.
Well, because I consider myself something of a selector, a sound selector, and I set the atmosphere, I set the vibration, basically. And since we all have a signature vibration that we're emitting, whenever we come into contact with another frequency, it can alter our signature in such a way that can feel negative and make us feel uncomfortable, or can be pleasing. And so I always seek to raise the vibration, but I know that for a fact that there's extensive studies on how the sound, like when it comes to the Rife machine and using frequencies for healing, and especially like with binaural beats. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's just they can, well, from my research, it's called the Winnie wave, and it was discovered maybe '94. And once they discovered that particular piece of the puzzle, they're able to kind of piggyback off of a frequency and be able to lower your defenses, so that you would have to be accepting of this disorganized type of chaotic sound. And when usually we have a natural defense towards it. So it's kind of like learning that, your heart is 5,000 times stronger than your brain when it comes to electromagnetic energy and what it radiates. So we are electronically, we are organic electronics, basically.
See, that's some demonic stuff, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, at this stage in the game, I'm telling you that we up against a battle against evil in our society, which, based upon what you just said in terms of these studies, I wouldn't be surprised if it helped them sell 100,000 more albums. I wouldn't be surprised, as you say, you the specialist in that. But I would hope that people who are looking at this realize this is the result you get from some behaviors of an entire crowd, not just the ones who are at the front, affected by some kind of a push or something. But if that is the case, if something like that was upsetting my stomach, I'd head for the gate to get out.
And many people did, but and include this discussion in the next. But what does it take other than, and obviously the FBI and the CIA have used sound and torture for years, so it's not much of a stretch to believe what you're saying. But I'm still interested in, what does it take to make a crowd go off? Be they at the...
Well, now when I'm looking at the crowd, I don't see people being violent or aggressive towards one another. And what I'm looking at is a wave of people that essentially, if the gates are not set up correctly and the fences are not set up correctly, you have 50,000 people in one line. And then when the artist comes, people start moving forward to get closer to the stage. So you're looking at a pressure wave.
I hear what you're saying, that it was sort of a natural wave, but and that's a fair assessment.
And
so
for some reason, they didn't have barriers up to control that or to control the crowd. As people were in those areas, they wanted to get out, but they were so tightly packed in. So was it?
I think what the next piece, if you take that for fact, which is fine, I think the next piece is the eyewitness accounts of people that were there that repeatedly described the incidents as demonic, satanic, evil, and just they've used a lot of religious language to describe the events there. There was a whole cadre of eyewitnesses who had no idea what happened, and they left the show thinking everything was fine. But most of the eyewitnesses who witnessed something described it in these religious words.
You asked a question earlier. You said, what does it take to get people to incite this type of rage? And it's called money. That's it. I brought up the George Floyd thing because of the protest.
Not what would it take to get somebody to incite people, but what does that person, how would that person then, what tools would that person then use to incite that crowd? Because that crowd's not acting on behalf of money. Maybe the artist is, but not the crowd.
Mob mentality
exactly
has been with us for years. The reality of what people have in their minds, we don't know. African-American community has suffered over the years. The Rosewood, Mississippi, different large cities that were just basically African-American communities that were destroyed by good, nice, church-attending mobs that people didn't expect to do that. And once it started, it just grew. Some of these people were probably deacons or nice, people that in their own community. But once they started, it just became a mob. I mean, the reality of mobs is evil. I mean, it's really evil. And all you need is sometimes it's just a rumor. It's not even the truth
Right.
that
More
starts the
often.
mob. I mean, let's be frank. We historically have seen this throughout American history. So I don't see, as tragic as it is, I don't see the mass comparison to other incidents that might have music, no music. People have negative behaviors, racist behavior, whatever, but they decide they're going to use a mob mentality. I think I'm more, for this incident, I'm more, like the young lady was saying, it's money driven with producers. They understand, you sell out $350 for a 2-day ticket for 50,000 people. That's minimum.
Yeah, that's not a
In 2-3 hours.
that's not
Come
a
on now.
financially disadvantaged group of people that's going to be going to that show.
No. Some of them people was white people had good money. Don't be talking about it's all fine. If somebody else, the Negroes didn't go to that show because they ain't had no money. Come on now, people flew in to go to this show. I mean, it's like a cult following. I mean, it's like a cult. The Rolling Stones had an incident where the Hells Angels was guarding the front, and they killed 2 people, 1 or 2, whatever.
That's right, Altamont,
I ain't hating
1979.
Yeah, okay, well, I ain't hating on the Rolling Stones or the Hells Angels, but the same thing happened. I mean, come on now. The reality is that we in a current era of these promoters and whatnot. Why did they not have that plan in place? They could have went to the White House and found out what they use for the National Park Service when they have 300,000 people. Come on now. That's a good example. They have it cordoned off and this, that, and the other. They just let them kids come in there. I say kids because all of us under 20-something years old come in there thinking they're going to have a good time, and it became a nightmare. That's what it became, a nightmare.
And
The telephone number is 713-807-1797. If you were there, if you just have some questions, if you think something doesn't smell right, give us a call, 713-807-1794.
And honestly, I would say that I could see the money issue being a problem. As it stated, in the Bible, money is the root of all evil. The question is, did Live Nation or whoever the promoters were set up the place according to the amount of money that they had? For the amount of money that they spent, they should have had the experts there to make sure they do crowd control.
That's right.
So I don't know if something evil happened in the crowd or anybody intended to hurt anyone. The fact is that the crowd control was not correct. When you look at the venue, of course, hindsight is 20/20, and I'm looking at a pressure wave of people moving forward and realize these waves move back and forth. So this may be tight, this may be jumping, and this may be tight over here, and it's moving back and forth. Why was that allowed to happen? Where are the barriers at? What keeps everybody from just running up to the stage? I don't understand. Monday morning.
Look at Dr. Higgins, Stacey. It was a part of how they have those events. You got a building right next to you that seats 70,000. Did I miss something here? Did I miss something? All you have to do is go in the building and have seats and have some order, sell popcorn, soda water, and have a nice show like the rodeo does for 30 days. It's no different.
Well, COVID-19, nobody wants to be inside.
Huh?
Nobody wants to be inside.
That's what I'm saying. They wanted to be outside in that environment, to have this kind of, I know, Stacey, you might remember when 6th Street in Austin was off the chain, and they used to have these huge raves. When the raves first started, nobody knew what a rave was. Them University of Texas students was dropping their stuff and doing their thing. It was packed. And people was getting halfway stomped. I don't know what the history is of death or injuries, but from what I understand, it was huge crowds that came. Crowds until the authorities in Austin said, huh?
Are you speaking of
No, I'm talking about, at the beginning, this is during the early influences of certain illicit, but
pre-South by
Stacey,
Southwest.
you should know what I'm talking about.
Pre-South by Southwest, yes I do.
Yeah, baby, we talking way back before South. They used to party up on 6th Street. They had to control that.
They did. The whole street would be just cramped.
Right.
It was crazy. Yeah. It was crazy. People coming all over the country. And other university cities, the crowd started imitating it. And they had to put a check on that in these college towns because these students would get out of control. Young people with 2 beers and something in their system with some crazy music. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about crazy music, but I mean good music that stimulates them. I'm like Higgins, I'm in my 60s now. I can't be stimulated a lot. My heart will go out. I don't need no music.
Let's talk a little bit about the science of group mind. Our producer wants to know.
You mean group ego?
Is there medical science to the group mind phenomenon?
Well, I mean, the fact is that you're looking at human behavior, and there are some oddities in what we do. Basically, I believe the group of that crowd was to go and have a good time. I really don't believe that it was the intent of somebody getting hurt. To slam your head around, jump around, get hyped, act a fool, get drunk, get high, possibly have sex. People do all those things at concerts. So I think that was the mentality of the crowd, but the thing turned into something different when it became scary. Now we're panicking. What do we do? And no one is coming to help us. You don't see, the music didn't shut off, the lights didn't come on. You didn't see a rush of paramedics, a rush of police, you didn't see any of that. So now everybody hits a survival mode. How do I get out of this? And essentially, when you put people in a pen and put a stimulation there of where they can't get out, it's all about survival at that moment for me and maybe somebody with me, but we're just trying to get out of here. And I think that's a lot of what we saw when people are getting stomped on. Well, man, I can't stand up myself. You're underneath me. I've got to stand above you in order for me to live. And that's not a way that the crowd should have had to be in that situation. That's to me poor planning. You've had bigger concerts, and honestly, and I'm gonna tell you, Travis, I don't know Travis Scott. I've never met him. I might have. He's from Sunnyside, South Park, Missouri City, all the places I grew up. I know if I haven't met him, I'm sure I've met his family. All right, because if you're from Houston and you grew up in Houston, if I don't know you, I'm 1 degree separated from you. And if you're Black, I probably met you sometime in my lifetime. I just forgot that we were in the 3rd grade class together.
I was going to say you look familiar.
So, I mean, the thing is that this is a guy from the community who produced music. He was producing it so well for other artists that he made his own music and did his own stages. Realizing that even though, his music is very popular, you have more popular artists with bigger hits,
right,
but not a lot of people make more money than Travis Scott. All right. That's because he's on the artist side, he's on the producer side, and he's a kid who came up through us. Houston brought this kid up, public schools and all that, private schools. I don't know where I went to school at, but he is one of us. And then something tragic happened. And as far I don't see anything in Travis's background that said, I'm going to throw a concert where a bunch of people die. That's not part of the makeup.
Have you seen the cover of the album?
What was that?
Have you seen the cover of the album?
Yes, I have.
Where it's like a big face.
Yeah, the thing is that Earth, Wind, and Fire had Egyptian stuff up. I don't think he went to Egypt. I don't know if any of them went to Egypt or were Egyptologists. The fact is that people have all kind of stuff on their albums to bring people to them. If you have a movie, if say for example, if Stephen King does a movie, I don't believe that Stephen King is promoting people to chop folk up with chainsaws.
Right. That's right.
All right. Freddy Krueger, I don't think the point of making Freddy Krueger was to find people to find gloves with knives on them so they could slash people up after they take a nap. All right. So I think some of this is entertainment of what people buy. And honestly, people, you control your image. People, you move towards areas where people sell, but just because you're selling something, I don't believe is the same as that you were thinking that somebody would do it. We make movies all the time, do music all the time, do paintings all the time, but it only seems to be in rap music where people blame the musicians who create the music for the behaviors that people do. I don't see this.
Let's give Frank.
I'm a musician myself. I'm an MC. I'm a poet. I'm an artist, and I believe in free thinking, free speech, and I'm all for everyone, maintaining their human rights. But we do have to invoke those, and we do have to, at some point, understand where, yes, we may give our word, we may sign our name on a contract, but morally, you still have something within, a compass within that gives you that, like, if it doesn't register that your compass is being manipulated with,
What do you think
you're
Travis
allowing.
Scott is doing wrong?
What?
What sort of imagery do you see that?
On the cover of the album, it's his face, and his mouth is very large, and it looks like a portal, and it has like the Astroworld, you know, roller coasters going through it, and you see little kids they look like they're being sucked into some kind of trap, into some kind of like underworld trap.
Well, I mean, I'm in agreement with you about these images, but when you go back to the former president and his incitement of everybody and all these other people kept getting sucked into his trap for 3-4 years. Ain't nobody say nothing about that. When the time came, here we had the results, which is an insurrection never seen in the history of the United States of America. You know, and then you go act like it was okay. Nobody said nothing. It's fine. We're going to tea. I mean, that's about as demonic as you could get.
I think 400
And, I mean,
people getting arrested.
We looking at that
something.
every day. You know, so entertainment is one thing. Politics is another thing. It still comes down to the evil. You know, I understand the reality of entertainment based upon, you know, making money, and these handlers and these music people online. That's what they in the business for. They will suffer. Everybody else's music suffers unless you have something in that light. And if you don't have it in that light, you'll find out your sales will just sit there and everybody go buy it. So that's the reality.
Well, the fact is that a lot of artists do not have control over what they see, what you see. And that is a constant complaint. Even now, I was hearing a female MC talk about, I'm a musician. I make music, I sing, I play multiple instruments. But in order for me to make it in this world as a rap artist, of which is popular, my hair is done like this. And people are, you know, the complaint was people are saying, now I need to go get my body worked on. So now I need to go have surgery in order to continue to sell music to this genre. And really what you're looking at a lot of times are people who make music. Now, the fact is this, if you decide that I'm gonna stick to my guns and do it my way, it's hard to get record deals like that. You know, not unless it fits in what they say. It's very hard. And sadly, that, you know, is that demonic? You know, and are you being controlled by outside forces?
I think
if demonic is being controlled by outside forces and you're not in control of yourself, I guess so. But it's about making money. It's the money is the trap.
I think Bob Marley said it best when he said, you know, why gain the world for the price of your soul?
Right.
And his music was definitely on the frontier of just, you know, having the appropriate outlet when it came to channeling these frequencies. And you asked earlier, is there something when it comes to group mind or group thinking? I usually call it group ego, because a lot of people are too superficial to really tap into a more elevated thinking. But I think Tesla, when he spoke on it, he said, if you want to gain some type of, you know, hidden awareness that's available, then you would think in terms of frequency. And I just feel like they've pretty much, through that Winnie wave, been able to create a mass psychosis, a mass hypnosis. And that was the objective with MK Ultra. I mean, since the 50s, since the 60s.
How would that benefit Travis Scott right now?
He's already benefited from it. I mean,
he's not going to be benefiting from it anymore after this.
Well, that's why they have insurance.
Well, wait a minute. I don't think that we can overlook the fact that as the entertainment industry, I'm dipping into these games, for instance. To be what's one of these games, Water Worlds or Rage or something. But the games, and they come out, and in less than 2-3 days, they done sold $1 billion worth of the games. You know,
speaking of profit, we should probably also mention the merch tents. And I think some of the
What's the name of it?
merchandise from the Travis Scott shows. They can turn this merchandise. This merchandise is not cheap stuff, and you can turn it around right after you buy it for 3 times, 4 times the amount right then. So the merch, and apparently the merch tents were part of the problem because of the way that they were placed, and people were in these merch lines for 4 and 5 hours, just waiting in these extremely long lines to get merch that they could turn around and sell for a profit right as soon as they got out of the venue.
Let me
Which
tell
is
you
another
something.
issue.
Go on, Doc Higgins. Go on.
Well, that's another issue of the setup. The setup was not done
Staged.
correctly. I'm like,
And the money
Right.
too. It's got both.
yeah,
We all
it's
remember-
almost as if you set it up to fail.
Exactly.
Like
Set up
that
for
ain't gonna
failure.
work. That's not going to work.
Do
That's
any
not-
of
that's
y'all
what-
remember?
that's what
I
they
think
wanted
that
to
goes
do.
to what Frankie's saying.
That was the
Stacey.
goal.
Stacey, you and Dr. Higgins, y'all right? Remember the Wiggles? You remember the group, the Wiggles?
I think from
it was a
elementary
group from
school.
Australia. They were men. They was a group, a band. They was
Really?
Australian band. They stayed in business 20 years. But
All
I
right.
went to
For
one,
children? Were they for children?
Yeah, they were for children.
Okay.
It was for children. But it was grown men. That was just
Yeah.
doing some crazy stuff.
All
This
right.
is way back before Sesame Street. Anyhow, I took my 2 children at the time, who got children of their own, to that concert, the Wiggles. And let me tell you something. What is now Lakewood Church, which was Combat Center, I'd never seen a venue that packed with people who had their children. And when we walked in, how you walk in, going to the concourse, whatever, it was just vendors everywhere. And the children were just pulling their parents.
Yeah.
I want this. They were hollering and crying. And my sons acted that way. I said, what, $20, $30 for a shirt. No, I mean, I went in there, listened to them, and they were just on stage acting crazy, acting funny. But the kids went crazy.
Like
These
Disney on
people-
Ice.
How do we
Stacey, you remember?
how do we
Stacey,
get
you
our
remember the
kids?
Wiggles?
How do we get in the 4 minutes that we have left? How do we get our kids? How do we get people to think for themselves and not stand in line for 4 hours for merch?
Dr. Higgins, you answer that question.
I got an answer for it. I don't.
Send them
I
to
don't.
China.
I mean, the fact is that I know for me, I listen to the popular music because that is what's on the radio, I'm in the car, but I think I was playing, Sam Cooke, on the way to work today. So, I try to listen to a lot of other things and then also realize that the rap that you're hearing, that's not all the rap out there. That's just what's popular. That's what's being sold. That's what's being pushed. Realizing that 90 to 95% of all the rap music that is produced by companies owned by old white men. And they make the decision on what you should hear and what you shouldn't hear. So the fact is that so often the people who are listening to the music, you don't get to decide what's going to be hot. They will play it enough with that beat, as you talked about, maybe that frequency enough that you're going to listen to that music, whether you want to listen to that music or not, because it's going to be pushed in your face constantly.
I mean, that's what they did with the Old Town Road and Montero. The name of that artist, Lil Nas X.
Lil Nas, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of snuck it in with this, where children are singing along to it, and it had this like total different meaning on the back end of it.
Right, and that's the I guess the good and the bad thing about rap music is you can insert a
Subliminal.
a track in there that you heard and enjoyed in your childhood, and here it is back again, and it's creating a memory that you sort of didn't know that you had, and you automatically like it. So,
and there's one song out right now that has like a religious kind of mention to it, and then they slide in kill people. And I'm like, you're going to combine religion and me having to murder somebody, and I can hear it in the music, and it influences the kids, the people who listen to it, especially when you're hearing it over and over and over. You're not in control of your own behavior, but when you get somebody hurt or get in trouble.
Above and beyond the concert, it is possible to manipulate mass groups of people through music and chanting and whatever have you. I mean, it is something that is done.
Internet You know, you look at the kid in Kenosha, you know, who murdered people. Why are you crossing state lines to buy an AR-15? That's because something is being beat inside of your head to where you really thought
You
that
need to
that
go
made good
protect somebody.
sense.
That you were
And
going to go
honestly,
save somebody, that your life
to
was
go
going to
save,
have some
yeah,
meaning, that,
yeah.
you know, that whatever it was that you thought that you were going to make a difference. So, yeah, I think that that's very important stuff to think about. We've just got a minute left. And before we go, I just wanted to thank everybody that showed up, and we'll have time for last comments. Frankie, 5 times, thank you for coming. Brother Sergeant Reverend Dr. Robert Gilmore and Dr.
Most standards in the state of Texas across the country. That's all. Most standards.
And Dr. Napoleon Higgins. I'm Stacey Davis. And last words, anybody?
I just wanted to say a good way to clear some negative energy. You mentioned Sam Cooke is listening to the originals, you know, and one artist I love is Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and she's considered the godmother of rock and roll.
You got a lot of nodding heads over here. Fellas, you have any last words?
Oh man,
Most standards.
Prayers be to everyone involved in what happened, and maybe we get some answers so it doesn't repeat itself.
Absolutely.
Pray for the families. Pray for the families.
I think we should have learned our lesson as far as general admission is concerned in 1979. Also, I do want to say that I've heard a lot of commentators say that this is the worst disaster since 1979, and I think they're forgetting the fire that happened in that warehouse and killed 100 people, which was also pretty bad. I'm Stacey Davis. You're listening. This was Public Affairs, Public Access. And I believe that's us wrapping up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all for coming.
Appreciate it.